what it costs. It'd look great on Mrs. Garrett.
Joe, we don't have enough money.
Forget the money. It doesn't have to cost anything.
Joe, you can't.
Relax, will ya?
If she gets caught, we'll be accessories.
How can we be accessories? We're in sportswear.
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I got to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what are we talking about tonight?
Well, we are mixing it up with the facts of life.
We're doing a Facts of Life mixtape. We usually, as you know, pick a sitcom trope and discuss 4 sitcom episodes over the years that have that trope, be it confronting a bully at school or going to your high school reunion. And we discuss 4 sitcoms. And then once in a while, we do our version of a clip show, which is a mixtape where we take a certain sitcom that has come up 4 or more times over the years, and we revisit or rerun, if you will, all of our segments about that show, all the while doing some sort of trivia or personality challenge to, just really kind of immerse ourselves in the greatness of that show.
That's right. And this time it's the greatness of the facts of life, which we covered on our very first episode, Losing Our Virginity. And Natalie was contemplating losing her virginity. And we watched the episode, season 9, episode 16, the first time. We also covered the facts of life in our Learning to Drive episode, when Tootie learns to drive, in our Chain Letters episode, where lots of crazy things befall the gang, and in our Caught Stealing episode, which comes from Facts of Life season 2, episode 6, Shoplifting.
Yeah. So what I learned from editing our Martin mixtape is that it doesn't really pay for us to give all of our thoughts and feelings about the show, because then we say all the same stuff the first time we cover it. And so for the listener, it's actually pretty redundant. What I will say right off the bat about the facts of life, even if it spoils a trivia quiz, the claim to fame for me is that I grew up in, or technically close to, Peekskill, New York, which is the setting for the facts of life.
That's right.
Before I lived in New York City, setting of many sitcoms, I lived in the town where the gals learned the facts of life. Go to boarding
school, that's right.
Yeah, I don't think the setting really played into the shenanigans in any meaningful
even when
way.
they were in the Learning to Drive episode, remember we were laughing how they had
palm trees all over the place.
They were very clearly driving in LA.
I don't think they ever shot on location in Peekskill. I don't know what gave them the idea to have it take place there, but
it's a spin-off of Different Strokes. So Charlotte Ray's character had been like a housekeeper, nanny kind of person to the Different Strokes characters, and then she got this job at the boarding school being the dorm mom.
Yeah, but that's just kind of a deep pull, or it's just kind of random that they chose Peekskill for the thing.
Different Strokes is in the city.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get to our first segment, let's crack open a trivia quiz. I'm going to ask you the questions because I feel like when we've covered Facts of Life in the past, you had a little bit more of a connection to it. I feel
These
like
are
you
my
watched
girls.
this. Yeah, you watched this more. So I'm going to ask you these questions.
Yeah, well, Jay was lusting after, Jamie
Nicole
on...
Eggert.
Yeah, Jamie on, on Charles in Charge. I was growing up with the Facts of Life.
Yeah, I'm looking at these gals right now as I take the quiz. And yeah, there is no Nicole Eggert here. Tootie is probably the cutest. But yeah, they've all, no shame on any of them. But yeah, none of them were capturing my heart as a young man, the way Jamie Eckert or Jamie Powell rather did. Anyway, okay, question number 1.
Okay.
What year did the first season of The Facts of Life premiere?
I think it was the year we were born, 1979.
That is a choice, and it is... I think that's right. Or maybe it's just going to log our answers. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens going forward. Which famous 80s actress was in the first season?
Molly Ringwald.
Yeah, very good. No choices needed. Let's see. All right. Again, I don't think this is telling me if you got it right until the end.
Okay.
So we're just going to have to review the answers.
Have to
I
wait
guess.
and see.
Yeah.
We can edit it in.
Yeah, or the people can just find out at the end. What was the name of the private school the girls attended?
Oh, it's like East something.
Yeah, you'll definitely get it if I give you the choices. You've got Northview, South Park, West Loop, or Eastland.
Eastland. Yes, it's Eastland.
All right, I'm going to log that answer. We will continue with this quiz momentarily, but first we are going to listen to a segment from our very first podcast ever.
Well, I'm excited to listen to this because I feel like we might have a different vibe and energy.
Oh, we
now.
definitely do. And I would say to the listener, apologies for, I'm sure, what is not quite the smooth as silk broadcasting dynamic
that you're used to.
that they've come to know and expect from the sitcom study.
We definitely do have newer microphones.
This is actually the very first segment we ever recorded. So we did a little preamble, so you're not going to hear the first 15 minutes or so of us explaining welcome to the sitcom study and all that. But this is the first time we ever covered a sitcom ever.
This is our first moment of this podcast.
Losing our virginity, if you will. And yeah, we also talked about Head of the Class, Full House, and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in this episode. But first up chronologically was the Facts of Life segment. So this is it.
You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. The Facts of Life.
Facts of Life, Season 9, Episode 16. Losing It? Did we confirm? Is that the episode title?
The First Time.
The First Time. So before we even get into the sex aspects of this.
Or the virginity aspect of it.
Yeah, what the hell? All right, so let's talk briefly. Did you watch Facts of Life?
Yes, but this is part of my confusion, right? Because I was shocked just moments ago to find out that it started in 1979, 1980, because I felt like I watched that show when it was on the air, and Tootie was a young girl. She was like the youngest of all the 4 or 5 girls, and she was the baby of the group, and I always just felt like she was close to my age, but that is way off. I mean, because she was playing like a middle schooler or a 9th grader in 1979, 1980, the year we were born. So I guess this is another one of these ones that I was watching in reruns out of order and not realizing it, that the ones that were actually currently on the air were the ones with George Clooney, and I didn't even know.
Yeah, I never really watched Facts of Life, but I always knew of it. I knew about Tootie. I knew about Joe. So when we put on this episode, which is late in the series, it puts you right into one of these sort of latter-day sitcom situations where half the cast isn't there anymore.
Well,
the whole premise has sort of been altered.
So there's something to that, right? The only person who actually from the original cast that wasn't in this episode is what's her name? Edna, whatever, the Mrs. Garrett. Mrs. Garrett.
What about Blair?
So Blair was still on the show. She, due to her religious beliefs, decided not to appear in this episode.
Oh my God.
Because they were going to be talking about premarital sex, and she did not believe in that.
Holy shit. Was this the first time this ever happened? In 9 years of the sitcom, the first time she ever had a problem with...
It is the only episode of the series in which she did not appear.
What? That's so funny, because I just assumed she wasn't on the show anymore because it was all rejiggered late into the...
Yes, no, I assumed the same when we watched it because, Cloris Leachman was now the house mother. They were very clearly in college, no longer at that, girls' school where they were at, the boarding house.
Yeah,
that
so
was
let's
the thing.
back up. What is the premise of the Facts of Life? What I know is it's a bunch of girls living together in a house with an old lady. So I assumed it was like some sort of sorority with like a den mother type lady.
So no, it's an all-girls school called the Eastland School, and Mrs. Garrett was a house mother and dietitian, which I didn't know, but just when I was looking it up, found that out. So she's like think about if you go away to a boarding school, you have a dormitory, and then there would be like a house mother who would kind of be there. So that's like my understanding is that this is some sort of, all-girls school. And they live there. And so this is their house. And so this episode was originally written for Blair, but because she refused to be in the show, they retooled it for Natalie. So Natalie and her boyfriend Snake have been dating for a year, and it's their anniversary, and they're going to go back to the place where they had their first date at the Green Something Inn.
And can I just stop and say, if you're not familiar with the show and you hear the boyfriend's name is Snake, and so you picture like a guy with a bunch of tattoos and a leather jacket and a, mohawk haircut or something. This is the most like normcore, like mild-mannered dude, right? In like khakis and like a sweater from Sears or something. But his name is Snake.
Yeah, but I think when he was originally introduced, right, wasn't he a little bit more
you have
rough
to
and tumble?
Assume, but it's just funny that of all the things that you could change about yourself, that you could shape up as you get older and mature, you would think the easiest one would be maybe stop calling me Snake.
Yeah, well, which he does at the very end of the episode. Anyway, yeah, so that's basically the premise of the show is just that. They, Natalie and her boyfriend are going to celebrate their 1-year anniversary. There is no indication other than the title, the first time, that this is going to be an episode about losing your virginity. She's excited. She goes out on her date and she comes home at 5:00 in the morning. They walk back in the house and they're like, oh, the sun is coming up, and they give each other a couple kisses goodbye, and they act like they don't really want to say goodnight. But again, no indication that any shenanigans have gone on. She goes upstairs and wants to wake up Tootie because she has something so exciting she wants to tell her. And then that's how it all comes out. And in the entirety of this scene where she's telling Tootie what happened, she never says the word sex.
Yeah, and I guess, are we supposed to understand that Natalie is the last one to lose her virginity?
No, I think she's the first one. I think that's why you have Joe's response being sort of weird about it, and then Tootie being the younger one absolutely wouldn't. Oh, and by the way, we didn't mention this, but the other reason that we thought that like maybe Blair was actually no longer on the show was because Cloris Leachman has 2 other kids. She's got her son and then an Australian girl who's a boarder at the house.
This is the standard ballooning of the cast that they would do
when
late
people
into the
leave.
run.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about Joe for a second. My understanding of Joe was that she was a badass. She was like a punker biker girl. Now, did she like...
She was a tomboy.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely, totally. But her whole shtick was more tomboy. Like she had this sort of rough and tumble exterior.
Yeah. Did she like fix cars and stuff?
Yeah, but she was like actually kind of, soft on the inside, or really, just.
Well, because we see her in this episode, and she's wearing pink. That's the first thing I noticed.
She was.
She's wearing
I didn't notice that.
Sweatshirt or something.
Okay.
And she's not doing anything tough.
Oh, and can we say the 80s hair in this episode, it was something to see. I mean, while in bed, Tootie's hair was like at the top of her pillow.
That's right. I didn't
so
really
big.
notice
And
that.
Joe's hair as well, which I think Natalie's was the only one who didn't have like the super big hair. She kind of had a bob and maybe just a little bit of the flip on the bangs that was like the cow lick kind of big thing.
So Tootie initially is super excited to have this juicy gossip, like you said. And then they're in the kitchen the next day, right? Basically the whole cast minus Blair, right? It's kind of like the full ensemble is down there.
Everybody's there, including the boarder from Australia, and Cloris Leachman's son, who's like very clearly a middle schooler.
Right. And so this is where Tootie pulls a Screech.
Oh.
Screech in Saved by the Bell was notoriously, he would give up your secret for absolutely no reason, completely unprompted.
See, and I was like Tootie's Lily from How I Met Your Mother. Can't keep a secret.
Yeah, same thing. They love that lazy plot device that there's one character that will just, give up the secret just because of who they are. So Tootie just sort of randomly says, Natalie slept with Snake. And everybody reacts to that.
Yeah, slept with, went to bed, spent the night with. They never, they just kept talking around it. It was like they were having this very mature episode of Facts of Life, but they couldn't say the word sex.
Yeah, which also, by the way, the name of the show is The Facts of Life. Isn't that itself like an innuendo for sex? How is this show on for 9 years? It's called The Facts of Life. And it's the first time they actually have an episode about the facts of life.
Well, you see, you take the good and you take the bad.
That's the thing. That's what they thought it was about.
You take them both, and there you have the facts of life.
So basically every character becomes aware of what happened.
And then they have to immediately move the conversation to another room where the middle school boy and the high school girl cannot hear them.
Everybody becomes aware that Natalie slept with Snake, and she basically gets a universally negative response from everybody.
Yeah, except for Tootie, who was just happy to hear about the gossip. Everybody else was kind of like silent, sort of giving her this look like, do you really think that was the best idea?
Joe in particular just really, it feels really cold. The way Joe is, Natalie goes like, Joe, come on, at least you'll back me up, right? It's not a big deal. And Joe's like, I don't know, Natalie, it's complicated, as though she's like, look, I'd like to support you, but you're asking of me something I just can't agree with.
Yeah, I noticed that too. And I was confused by that because the day before, in quotes, right, they all were so excited about her going on her date, that was the 1 year anniversary, and they all seemed to really like Snake as much as you can like a character named Snake. And so then the reaction of, oh, are you sure you should have done that, made me think, oh my gosh, are there earlier episodes that we need to go back and watch? Like, this guy isn't a good boyfriend, or this relationship.
Great.
He did.
Can we say the way that he's introduced in the episode is after it's established that she's excited that it's her anniversary, he comes in and it seems like he's forgotten. And
he's in work coveralls.
Right. He lets that play for a minute or two, and then he's like, surprise, let me rip off my tearaway fake clothes because I've got a tuxedo
snaps,
underneath.
They were just snaps, and he had a suit underneath.
Yeah. So it seems that he's a good guy. They're like an established
as
thing.
That, and everybody likes him. But then the next morning, should you have made that choice?
Yeah. So there's this extreme sort of seriousness surrounding this. And then, just as she's sort of trying to make sense of how everybody's reacting to it, she gets a call from Snake.
Yes.
And he says something to the effect of like, I can't see you today. I need some time. I need some space. Right. Very sort of vague and inconclusive.
And also, I can't see you tomorrow.
Right.
It was like the double rejection. Like, I'm not going to see you tonight, and I'm not going to reschedule.
Right. And so, of course, Natalie is sort of like cautiously optimistic and going like, well, whatever. He only, he's just saying he needs some time. But everyone's assumption is he's used you and losed you, right? he's pulling a wham bam.
Yeah, but also I think Natalie had an interesting reaction, and I kind of liked it because she was both crushed and optimistic. Like, she felt all of that, like, oh no, this isn't good. And you could read it on her face. And she did a really good job with that scene. And then it was only when everybody else started piling on with those negative feelings that she was like, well, it's not like he's just going to up and, she didn't say ghost me, but basically she like the 80s term for ghost me. She was like, it's not like he's just going to never speak to me again. We've been together for a year. Like that's not that. No, like that's not going to happen. It's not like I'm never going to hear from him again or something like that, she said. And so that, and then, but still Tootie was still optimistic and on her side. Like she never came over to the, she was like, oh, Nat, I'm sorry that this is hurting you. And, you're probably right. Kind of that girlfriend person being like, yeah, whatever. And if he doesn't, screw him because he's a bad guy anyway. Like you're better than that. Like she played the role of like the girlfriend, and then Cloris Leachman and Joe kind of were playing the role of this, like the insecurities in your mind, when you realize that this could potentially be going in a rejection way.
Yeah, it's kind of like Natalie's, her inherent mindset is positivity, and then she sort of gets contaminated by their skepticism. And so, at that point it becomes, what's the deal, right?
Yeah, what's going to happen? How long is this going to go on?
Yeah, and you feel this sense of like, oh my God, are we going to see the tragedy of Natalie having been duped out of her virginity, right? That Natalie made this horrible mistake of, sleeping with this guy who turned out to not be, turned out to not love her or whatever.
Right, who turned out to just be putting in a year's worth of time to, to score, which seems ridiculous. That's what, like, who would put in a year if all you were after was an easy score, So I, at this point in the show, was a bit frustrated because I was like, is this the direction we're really going to go? She's going to like learn her lesson this way? This sucks. Like, I wasn't happy with that. And then it kind of, we go to later in the day and then the next day and he still hasn't called. And even Tootie is a little bit like, hey, forget about him. And Natalie's still like, you know what? He said he needed some space. He said he wanted to think some things through. And I'm going to trust him in that, even though it was hurting her and she was uncomfortable for sure. And then she seeks advice from Joe.
What does Joe say?
Well, it's really up to you, Nat. Like a non-committal, non-answer. And Natalie reads her the riot act. She's like, that's not an answer. If you're really my friend, you're going to tell me what you think because I'm struggling here and I need your advice. Yeah. And she was like, basically, well, what do you want me to say? She was like, if this is the way he's going about it, it sucks. But you don't need to be beating yourself up because you didn't do anything wrong. You made a decision. And so Joe sort of like switches her kind of skepticism and judginess that we saw at the beginning and was kind of like, you're a grown woman. You made this decision. You've been together a year. You love this guy. It was a wonderful night. Stop beating yourself up about it. If he chooses to head for the hills now, it's his loss. And your decision was still your decision. Did you have a good time? Have you loved him all this time? And was it fun? And she basically was like, yeah. So Joe was like, well, then stop worrying about it.
Yeah. And she separates the idea. She says, you're upset because he might break up with you. It's not about having had sex.
Mm-hmm. And that is when it was like, okay, they are gonna go in a more like healthy, sex positive direction for women in this episode where she's made the decision. And like you said, it's not about that having sex was a bad decision. It's that, it would be sad if they broke up. Exactly. But the sex has nothing to do with that.
And then eventually Snake comes home. Snake comes back and basically says, I didn't need that time alone to break up with you. I needed that time alone to crystallize my plans to marry you. Right. Or like step forward into this like long-term commitment because marriage is where we're headed, isn't it? And Natalie's like, say what now? So this is where I feel like Natalie, I guess we'll see if this is borne out over the other shows, but I feel like she has maybe the most and possibly the only sort of healthy attitude about sex that we see across all of these shows. I feel like she just lays down this, like, the closest thing to a sort of balanced wisdom that we're going to get, where she's basically like, what are you talking about? Like maybe it's not that one thing has nothing to do with the other, but it's not a direct A to B to C thing. And of course we don't need to get married because we just had sex.
Right. Because sex is now part of our relationship. It doesn't mean that we have to get married. And also, we can just still be together and take it one step at a time. Like you said, she kind of lays it all out in this very mature way of, we like each other, things are going well. We don't need to fast forward just because we had sex.
I feel like what is kind of a common thread, maybe, the show is trying to grapple with this idea of like, we want you to take sex seriously and understand that it's a big deal and you can't just do it all willy-nilly, but we're not exactly sure why. Because Cloris Leachman says, in my day, you waited till you were married, right? So we're sort of acknowledging, like, it used to be for religious purposes or whatever, and now we're moving past that as a society. And yeah, it's like they don't quite know what the parameters are.
Well, I think they did give it some parameters, right? So there's at least two different times where Natalie or someone else says they're adults, right? And they make a point to say that they're 21, so that they're, it's very clear they're in college. This isn't Tootie. This is, she's supposed to be a little bit younger than them, I think. And then also they have the conversation with the girl from Australia, the like high school girl, where they kind of shush her out of the room and say that they can't talk about this stuff when she's there because it's not appropriate for her, which then leads to Cloris Leachman going to have a conversation with her. And she and that character is like, look, it's not back in Australia, it's not as big of a deal as it is here in the United States. A lot of my friends have sex before they're even out of high school. And she identifies herself as like 14, right? Because she's saying, so she's asking Cloris Leachman's character, so when would be, when's appropriate for me to have sex? Can I have sex when I'm 15? Can I have sex when I'm 16? Yeah. What about when I'm 17? And they have this whole conversation about that. And Cloris Leachman just shuts it down. She's like, nope. So they definitely have some parameters on it where it's like, it's not appropriate to talk to the middle school boy about this. He's got to go off to school and not be a part of any of this conversation at all. It is appropriate for an adult, like a grown woman like Cloris Leachman's character, to have a one-on-one conversation with this young high school girl, but she also is not allowed to be a part of these bigger conversations around sex. And then everybody is going to judge you if you do it, and you've got to find your own chutzpah to kind of stand up for yourself. And that's like, that was sort of the takeaway. And I think that tracks, right? Do
you think that was their intention?
The judgment around a woman choosing to have sex at any age is fraught,
Yeah. And so I guess to an extent you could understand why Blair would protest it, because it is, as much as it's a little rocky along the way, it actually is a sort of premarital sex stance.
Yes.
Like we said, it does ultimately, it's surprising, I think, with a modern eye to look at it. It's surprising how much resistance Natalie gets to watch it in 2023 and be like, geez, like your friends, your peers at 21 years old aren't patting you on the back.
Well, and I'll say this to move, we can move on to the next show. I think that what I noticed about all four of them is that there really was like a positive, like feminist tilt on all of the four episodes.
Well, all right. We've got a lot. I feel like our next one is going to, I might challenge you a little bit on that on the next one.
Well, okay. I see what you're saying on, but we'll get there. Yeah.
All right, so that was from the Losing Our Virginity podcast. We're going to listen to a segment from the Learning to Drive podcast where Tootie learned to drive. But first, we're going to log a few more trivia questions. So I ask you, who did Blair marry on The Facts of Life? We're looking for first and last names.
Wow, I have no idea.
Okay,
that was definitely in those later years with Cloris Leachman, and I didn't watch those as much as I watched the earlier ones. Tell me if any of these ring a bell. These are some bougie-ass names. Well, she's very bougie.
Yeah, we got Tad Warner, George Burnett, Stephen Bradley, or Andy Moffat.
Wow, I'm going to go with Stephen. Oh, man, but I like Tad Warner. I don't know.
It's Warner, not Warner.
I like that one. I feel like that one is, to me, the best sitcom name. If I was going to name a boyfriend or a husband for Blair, it would be Tad Warner. But her name is Blair Werner, isn't it?
I don't know.
I think her name is Blair. I think she has a W last name. So I'm going to go with Stephen Bradley.
All right. Duly noted. Who played Blair's father?
Oh, I have no idea. Do we have choices?
Yes, we have choices. Only one of these is an actor that I've heard of.
Okay.
The choices are Alex Rocco. He's the only one I've heard of.
I don't know.
John Lawler, Nicholas Coster, and Scott Bryce.
Wow. Yeah, total shot in the dark. I have no idea. I'm going to go with Nicholas Bryce.
Yeah, Alex Rocco is a character actor who would always play like mobsters and tough guys and stuff, usually. You said Scott Bryce?
Yeah, whoever was the Bryce. I think I said Nicholas Bryce, but I was like combining two of them or something.
Okay. How interesting. This actress voices Velma Dinkley on new Scooby-Doo movies and shows. And when we say new, this is probably like 7 iterations of Scooby-Doo prior, because they're always making new versions.
I think that's Mindy Cohn. I think that's Natalie.
She is one of the choices.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to leave this for the moment and give the listeners another segment from the past podcasts. This is from our Learning to Drive episode. So this was the one where we had Taxi on this episode, Reverend Jim, Learning to Drive.
Yes.
We had Sister, and we had 8 Simple Rules. I think that was the first time we had ever covered that. Yeah. But yeah, this is our next time covering the Facts of Life. It's from our Learning to Drive podcast.
It takes a lot to get 'em right when you're learning the facts of life.
All right, let's move on to Facts of Life.
Season 7, Episode 14, Tootie Drives.
Yeah, so we talked about the Facts of Life on our very first podcast episode ever when Natalie was contemplating losing her virginity. We still cannot get to the older, good seasons of Facts of Life. We're still stuck in these later weird ones where they run a store or they have weird semi-siblings and the other ones have gone away. This is season 7, and so we've got... Have we lost any of the major characters yet?
No.
So it's not that weird. It's mostly just like getting a little played out.
Cloris Leachman. So we still have, Mrs. Garrett, and all the girls are technically still in high school. Tootie's the youngest. She's supposed to be 16 in this episode. The other girls are supposed to be like juniors and seniors. And so, yeah, we're still kind of solidly in that, like, they're still in school. But gosh, they just look, Tootie, Kim Fields is legitimately 16 in this episode, but you could have fooled me. She looks like a grown-ass woman. Yeah. And so do all the other girls.
Yeah, it's season 7. So this episode is going to be about Tootie learning to drive. Like you said, she's the youngest. And it starts with, and this is going to be another, recurring subtrope, she's waiting for her learner's permit. Right. We get a lot of permit versus permit pronunciations across these episodes. But she's waiting for it to come in the mail. Now, I'm pretty sure when I did that stuff, they would give you something like a temporary card then and there at the DMV when you took the little written test or whatever you had to do to get the learner's permit, right? You didn't have to
I think
wait.
This is before the learner's permits or even driving licenses were cards. cards. This is when they were just like handwritten pieces of paper that had your name on them.
Yeah, but just for some reason, I remember them always giving you some temporary thing then and there, like in case you wanted it right away. But in any case, it does eventually come in the mail. And so now she needs a car and she needs a licensed driver to help her, to
get
take
her to
around.
practice. Exactly. And she doesn't want to take driver's ed because it's not available until the next semester, and she'd have to wait another 2 months, and she already had to wait a bunch of time for this permit to come through. So she's just absolutely not having it. She is convincing and whining and whining and convincing until people will help her learn to drive.
Yeah, they all have their different objections. Blair has a fear of being seen in a Volkswagen, she says. Joe doesn't have the patience. Nat doesn't have the time. Natalie has a whole thing where she works in a mortuary now. I guess she used to work in a supermarket because they have all these little jokes at the beginning of like, she goes, last time I forgot where I was and said bag or box, which I thought was kind of funny that the 80s version of paper or plastic was bag or box, I guess.
Yeah, I guess before plastic bags became like a thing, you had the box or you had paper bags.
I'm imagining like the same number of plastic bags that are scrunched together at the end of a supermarket, having that many boxes stacked up at the end of the checkout aisle. But anyway, Natalie works at a mortuary. That's going to play into things, but everyone has a reason why they don't want to help her. And then Tootie, just basically works their charm. And so it sort of switches over to, okay, everyone will help her. And we'll get the first of our many sort of camera planted at the, end of the car, and we're going to have the 2-shot of the 2 people at the dashboard and the foibles of learning how to drive. And in this case, it's going to be basically every cast member in turn having a little scene with Tootie, imparting their wisdom just in the garage.
Right. And so she stars, and it start with Natalie, right?
Yes,
it starts
it's
with
Natalie
Natalie.
first.
And Natalie is like, all right. And she's reading the manual, and she's like, so giving her all these instructions, like you need to check for things in the way of opening the garage door. You need to check for things in the way of the doors and check. Yeah. And Tootie is just like, can't we just drive? Like, I need to practice driving, not all of this stuff. I already passed the written part of the test. And she was like, do you want me to teach you or not?
Yeah.
And so everyone is just being very like, okay, we have to start from the very beginning.
Well, yeah, it's like they all have one thing that they're obsessed with that is like beside the point, or
right.
Not necessarily even one thing. But yeah, Natalie is like, we must inspect the tires for proper inflation. And of course, when you get to Joe, she's like, there's 10 systems of a car. You got your steering, your transmission, your exhaust,
right.
Like she's going to mechanic school or something. And then they even have Mrs. Garrett come in. And then even, I guess, as a joke, they have little Mackenzie, the 12-year-old kid, with her for a while, imparting
holding
his
up
wisdom.
Street signs that he's made.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, what sign is this? And she's like, I already did this part. He's like, I took forever to make these signs. You're gonna guess what they are.
That's his contribution. It's kind of fun the way they string together the dialogue. So it's a little bit like the part in Austin Powers where it's like, it looks like a giant Johnson. And then it cuts to the next scene. Like they make it so that one piece of dialogue always feeds into the next.
Yes.
So like it's this one continuous thing.
Which is kind of a cool thing for television. I don't know that they'd done a lot of that before. So it was kind of a cool little trick in the writing.
Yeah.
And then finally she's just like, that's it. And she goes to like pull, and she's like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. And she just takes off, pulls out of the garage. And Natalie's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And so one particular connection that I have to Facts of Life is that it takes place in Peekskill, New York, which is very close to where I grew up. Right. But it was definitely not filmed in Peekskill, New York. It's filmed in California. So
which you could tell by the blue street signs.
By the palm trees, by so many things. Yeah, they start doing these exterior shots. And we talk about it all the time, how we love the sitcoms that are your good old-fashioned multi-camera sitcoms where you're planted in a living room set or a kitchen set and it has that vibe to it. But in the rare cases where they take the cameras outside, it looks weird as hell and is just a totally different production style. And in this case, yeah, it's cheap video footage of somebody driving around
down the street.
Yeah. Now, there's a recurring thing in this show where all of Tootie's driving adventures are humorously matched up to Beach Boys songs.
That's right.
Those
Round,
corporate
round,
whores,
get
the
around,
Beach
I
Boys.
get around.
Yes, they could not sell the rights to their songs fast enough in the 80s. And so we get
they had to pay for Brian Wilson's drug problems.
Yeah, I guess so. They have like 5 or 6 of these needle drops where, you know, whenever they show her driving, they match it up with a different song, whether it's Dead Man's Curve for one of them when they're showing her go around a turn or whatever. But just like you and me, Tootie fails her first test because we see the newspaper thing come on the screen that says Peak Skill Press with the headline, Tootie fails.
Tootie fails.
And I was confused because her failing wouldn't be front page news. So I'm like, is it a joke?
Being funny. Yeah, it was just a joke.
But I guess I was confused at first if this was a fantasy. Like, this seemed like the kind of thing that would happen in a pink bordered Saved by the Bell fantasy sequence because she's worrying about failing.
Yes.
And because it happened so quickly and the general like narrative storytelling skills on display here aren't always so rock solid, I was kind of unsure for a good part of the episode. Like, did she fail her first time and is taking it for a second time? Because we don't see any of that test. We just see her go out the door and then this Peak Skill Press newspaper thing.
I didn't take it that way. I took it as like they didn't want to have a scene of her coming back in and being like, well, I failed. It'll be okay next time. No. Because they had all these other scenes that they needed to get to, including her taking the driving test for real, like later on. So just as like a quick, we're going to let that news get out there, then, okay, Tootie fails. All right, now she's trying to schedule more time to practice driving because the reason she failed was that nobody really let her drive when they were doing her practice sessions. Right. And she didn't want to reschedule because it took her so long to get the first test scheduled in the first place. And so she was so mad, and she's mad at everybody. And now nobody wants to let her use the car again. And she can't use the Volkswagen for the second test because Mrs. Garrett is going somewhere. She has an engagement. She has to be somewhere. So now she's trying to find someone who will let her have a car for the test. And Blair has a BMW and she's like, you're not getting in it. It's stick shift. You can't. And she doesn't know how to drive a stick shift. And then that's when we hear from Joe that, you know, you can't do it on a motorcycle. That's different. And then that's how we end up with Natalie kind of giving in like always and not stealing, but using her company car, which is a hearse.
Yeah. So we get a fun sitcom-y scenario of taking your driving test in a hearse, which I do genuinely wonder if they would let you do that, or like any sort of weird specialty vehicle like that, if they would let you take your normal, you know.
I mean, I don't know. It's like Natalie says, it would just be like driving a station wagon.
Yeah,
so you don't have to have a special license for a hearse.
It's not exactly. It's more like driving a limousine, right? Because they are pretty long, I think. But I don't know. She takes the test with the hearse. Natalie is like hiding in the back and she keeps teasing her that there's a dead, but she keeps teasing her and us basically, because we don't really know this whole time. Is there a dead body in the back of the car or not?
Right. But then we find out not, because the boss from the mortuary calls and says, hey, are you still out getting it cleaned? And she's like, yeah. And he was like, all right, well, when you're done, there's a pickup.
Yeah. Okay, so sorry. So no body in the back
until later, because she says, "Okay, I'll go do the pickup." Yeah,
the instructor or administrator gets into the car, and this is probably established lore on the show, but this is the first time I learned that Tootie is Dorothy Ramsey. Right, that's her real name, which she doesn't even respond to. You know, she has to sort of do a double take to be like, "Oh yeah, that's me," but everyone calls me Tootie. And so he gets in, and they start their test to more Beach Boys music.
Right, Natalie has to hide in the back because you're not allowed to have an extra person in the car when you're taking a driving test. No passengers allowed. And you know, of course, the instructor makes a comment on the fact that it's a hearse and whatever. And then the phone rings in the car and he like looks at Tootie and Tootie's like, and then she answers it. So she's talking on the phone during her driving test.
And this is going to be another subtrope. This happens again in one of the other episodes. And it's just funny, like, it's always been dangerous, but it just had a different connotation. Like the whole idea of a car phone and taking a call in the phone was this like weird luxury thing in the 80s. And so, yeah, it's just funny that now it would be even more discouraged, I think, but it would just be much more sort of banal, you know?
Right. Well, but also totally, and now it's illegal. Then it wasn't, you know, most places you can't do that. You can't have an actual phone to your ear that's handheld. So she passes the phone call back to Natalie. And so the guy figures out that there's a person in the back and he's like, I can't, you know, this test can't continue. We have to go back. And Tootie works her whiny magic and gets what she wants, like she always does. And he's like, okay, but you can stay back there, but you have to be silent.
Yeah, well, I have to say, this DMV instructor, he's prickly, but, you know, he's got a heart at the end of the day.
Yeah, he is nothing like that crazy lady that I tested with.
No, he is portrayed as, you know, he starts out as your sort of standard, like, intimidating adult, a little gruff, and, you know, he's kind of an older guy. But then as it goes on, you know, he's more confused and bewildered by all the wacky sitcom stuff that's happening around him. And I don't know, he just has a twinkle to him that I'm like, I kind of like this guy. He's not really so mean.
So, yeah, I mean, he definitely puts up with a lot of crap and just kind of rolls with it, I guess.
Wow.
So then they get the second call that says, you got to pick up and you need to go and get this. And Natalie tries to get out of it and is like, well, they're saying here at the car wash, it's going to be a little longer. And okay, all right, I guess we'll go. So then Tootie's like, we have to go. Please, we can continue the test on the way there. And somehow convinces this man to let the test be this random drive to this other location to pick up a dead body.
Yeah. And then we get like hitchhikers or like a group of people at a disabled car, you know, like
That's
a
right.
family on the road that needs help. And so this reminded me of the part in Dumb and Dumber where they're picking up more and more people and they're singing the Mockingbird song in the car. Like it's just those funny jump cuts to the next scene where there's like twice as many people stuffed into the same, you know, little front seat of this hearse. And this poor DMV guy is just like, oh, get a load of this. And you got this whole family in there.
Well, and so Tootie convinces him that they have to pull over for these stranded motorists because page, you know, whatever section, whatever of the driving manual says that it is your responsibility as a responsible driver to help, you know, or bring assistance to any person on the roadway, stranded, whatever. And so he's like, I can't argue. The guy's like, I can't argue with that. It's in our manual. So, okay, I guess we have to pull over and help these people.
The manual is a guide for morality as well as, you know, how to drive.
But what they didn't think of is that there is a phone in this car.
Yeah.
Call someone to help them.
Yes, it's very silly. But yeah, you get this sitcom-y scene with, you know, 8 or 9 people stuffed into the front seat of this car. And, you know, the rest is history, right? She ends up getting her license, doesn't she?
Yep, she passes after all of those shenanigans.
Yeah. So look, in terms of tracking the trope, we can really kind of sink into this one. We've got, like I said, just that shot looking over the hood of the car at, you know, the driver and the passenger teaching them. We're going to get that in all of these episodes. And we're going to get that thing of like the process of teaching someone how to drive says more about the teacher than the students, right? And everyone's going to have their wacky style of doing that. And so, yeah, we're going to see that continue with Sister. Okay, that was from the Learning to Drive podcast. This next one is going to be from Chain Letters, but let's finish out the trivia quiz.
Okay.
What? All right, come on. Every schoolboy knows this one. What famous TV doctor was fired from the show?
Oh, George Clooney.
Yes, it was not Neil Patrick Harris, Noah Weil, or Maura Tierney. I think we all know it's
Isn't it Noah Wiley?
George Clooney. Noah Weil, sorry, yeah.
Wiley?
Yeah, I don't know. I call him Wiley.
Yo, you call him Weil. You keep saying Weil, and I keep saying Wiley, and you keep saying Weil.
It's Wiley?
It's Wiley.
I say Weil.
Okay.
When Charlotte Rae left the show, she recommended which actress to replace
Cloris
her?
Leachman.
All right. Which actress was nominated for a Best Actress Emmy Award in 1982 for her role on the show?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's the four girls are the choices.
Oh,
Kim Fields, Charlotte Rae, Lisa Whelchel.
Well, Charlotte Rae is not one of the four girls. She's the...
Oh, okay. And Nancy McKeon.
That's so interesting. It's probably Charlotte Rae.
Yeah, they didn't let Mindy even be an option there.
Yeah. I mean, if it had been the four girls, my instinct would have been Nancy McKeon, even though Blair was the one that got more storylines. But I sort of vaguely remember it would have been probably like the 80-81 season that Nancy McKeon's character came on, was introduced, and she had that whole like I'm a bad girl arc. And it took her a while to settle in. So I would have gone with her, but with Charlotte Rae on there, I think it's going to be her.
All right, locked in. And final question. What Facts of Life star hosts MeTV, MeTV's popular series Collector's Call?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I would probably go with Mindy Cohn just because she's the one that's out and about more often than I see her. Whereas Tootie, Kim Fields does, but she still does sitcoms. I wouldn't think that she would be hosting some sort of reality collector show. So anyway, if Mindy's on there, that's my guess.
Yeah, the choices are Nancy McKeon, Lisa Whelchel, Kim Fields, and Mindy Cohn. So you think it's Mindy?
I think so.
All right. Submitting the answers, and you will find out how you did after the next segment. Ryan Seacrest is alive and well in the sitcom study. So this one is from the Chain Letters podcast. This was where we had All in the Family. Yeah, Edith had the chain letter stuff. We had a Home Improvement on here. We had a Third Rock from the Sun.
Oh, yes.
Dick.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, this was a good one. And so this is the Facts of Life segment from the Chain Letter podcast.
Yes.
It takes a lot to get them right when you're learning the facts of life.
All right, moving on to the Facts of Life.
Season 5, Episode 13, The Chain Letter.
Yep, so this is going to be one that is focused very heavily on Edna's Edibles.
That's right.
Which is the store that they all work at. I'm going to say this store is like 98.4% wood, right? I've never seen more wood.
It looks like a ye old country store.
To me, it looks like your parents' cabin in the hills.
Yes,
like it looks like it was built from wooden planks. And don't get me wrong, I like that aesthetic, but there's so much wood. Like you need some kind of countertops or something to balance
signs,
that out.
Anything to break it up.
A floor that's maybe a different substance.
Some gingham tablecloths or something.
But very, very wooden. You and I both sort of giggled when they first said the phrase Edna's Edibles.
Yes.
But I wasn't sure why. Is that because there is something in real life called Edna's Edibles?
No, I mean, is there? I don't know. But no, it made me giggle because I was like, oh, this is season 5. Mrs. Garrett has left her position as the house mom at the Eastland Academy School. But
somehow still stayed in charge of all these girls.
No, so that's what I'm going to explain. So here's what happened. At the end of season 4, the Joe and Blair graduated. Now they go to Langley College, which is supposed to be still in the area, and Tootie and Natalie are still at school. They're still in high school at the girls' high school. So the girls couldn't all live together anymore if they stayed at that house. So the construct is that instead, Mrs. Garrett is like, I'm going to go open my own store. And so I'm moving out of this dormitory and just in time for Blair and Joe to need a house to stay in because they're going to be, going away to college. And then Tootie and Natalie get permission to live off campus and not live in the girls' housing. So now they can all still stay together and work at this store instead of just her being the house mom. So now they all just live at her house, which is connected to the store.
Yeah. So this, pretty much literally this entire episode takes place in this store set. It is, that explanation that you just gave, it is wild to me that anyone thought that made more sense than just saying, they got left back and stayed in school, or they all went to the same college, or whatever. Just wave it away.
Well, because they are a few years apart. So they were trying to come up with a reason and also switch things up here in season 5. Earlier in the season, Blair decides not to live with them because she's gonna go live at the sorority house because she rushes Gamma Gamma. But I think at some point, I don't know if she's currently living at the Gamma Gamma house or if she's back living with them. At some point she does that.
This is all Edna's Edibles action here.
Yes.
We're
So
going to get no
back
personal
to Edna's
stuff.
Edibles. The reason I giggled is because I was like, oh, she went from being their house mom to giving them gummies, weed gummies.
That's funny. We're going to start here with everybody's got their own little mini thing that they've got going on that's going to be, disrupted by the chain letter. We've got Blair fretting over her passport picture, right? Her whole thing is vanity, so she wants to make sure her passport picture looks good. Natalie has decided that she wants to be Miss School Spirit. That's like an election that her school is doing. These are all you go into the writer's room and go hey guys, in the next 3 seconds, everyone give me an idea for something that the character wants. These are Z level sitcom story ideas that are we're going to devote 4 sentences to this throughout the entire episode. So give us all your worst ideas. So we've got what is Tootie's thing? Do you even remember?
Tootie is doing a science project where she is raising fruit flies for her genetics project, and she is trying to allow them to gestate and then hatch, and then she wants to see how many of them have long wings, short wings, red eyes, black eyes.
So Tootie's thing is actually going to be significant and play into the rest of the story more than the school spirit thing.
Yes.
But
the others are just distractions so that the girls can't do what Mrs. Garrett needs them to do. And
also that they have something that they're hoping for that, like I said, gets messed up by their alleged bad luck. But so their chain letter comes. We get the same scene we get in all of these episodes. Here comes the mail. Oh, look, it's a chain letter. This is the chain of gold. And this is
Tootie is the one who sent it to them.
Okay. I guess this is going to be kind of a thing that happens in a lot of these episodes.
It was the neighbor, Irene or something, who sent it. Yeah, who sent it to Edith. And then this is Tootie sends it to the other girls.
Yeah. Now, like you mentioned before, and I was not aware of this as a thing, but this is going to be a monetized chain letter.
This is a scam chain letter. And these were the ones that my mom kind of warned me about when I was young, where it was okay, what you have to do is not only do you have to send out this chain letter to 10 people, 15, 20 people, whatever, but you also have to send it back to the person whose name is at the top of the list. And you send your money, $1, or in this case, I think it was $15. You have to send $15 to that person whose name is at the top of the list. And then when you recopy the letter, you take off the person whose name is at the top of your list, and the next person's name down becomes the top of the list. So the thinking is eventually your name will become the top of the list for enough people that
this is a multi-level marketing
thing. That you'll end up getting a bunch of letters with $15.
This is, you see here the seeds for so many of the modern annoyances. It's a multi-level marketing thing. It's also like the great uncle to the deposed Nigerian king that is contacting you, to do this financial exchange. It's all this bullshit that's preying on people's naivete and boredom and all of that. And And yeah, like I said, I don't remember this ever being a thing. I had scant experience with chain letters to begin with. But so that's all the more reason why they're like, we don't want to do this, right?
Yes.
They all kind of roll their eyes at
And they're like,
the whole notion of
Tootie, this is horrible. I can't believe you sent this to us. What a burden, kind of. And I remember thinking the same thing. Like after my first one, I was excited to get mail. And then after that, it was like, oh no, this is a burden. Like you have to recopy the same letter that isn't short up to 20 times, which takes forever. And then you got to get stamps. So you got to send them out. I mean, it was just, what a pain in the ass. No, thank you.
Yeah. Now, the example, the cautionary tale in this one is going to be a pine tree fell on a poodle in Vermont.
Yes.
Right?
Wait, in the last one, was that the the Navy guy from Borneo whose head got chopped off? No, that's a later one. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess so they all sort of scatter, but like you said, the real crux of this is going to be about Mrs. Garrett and the responsibilities that she's laid upon the girls because they are all her employees, and she's got this inspection coming up. Now, she thinks it's coming up on the horizon, like in a few weeks, but she's asked Joe to send something in the mail. She's asked, Tootie to clean out the fridge or whatever. She's asked Blair to make a sign where, that she needs a sign by the door or something. She's given them all jobs.
Right. So she has all this paperwork from the health department that's basically saying, here are all the things you have to be up to code. One of the things is there has to be a sign on the door or by the door that said this door is to remain unlocked during business hours, and then it has the business hours underneath it, right? And then Tootie has been keeping her fruit flies in the refrigerator so they can do their thing, and she's supposed to do her science experiment and then get rid of them.
Yeah.
Because that's what, and then, of course, what happens, she doesn't remember to get rid of them. So there's this mason jar full of dead fruit flies in the refrigerator that is used for the food. Natalie is supposed to line the pasta barrels. So they have these big wooden barrels because everything was wooden. And that's where all of the dry pasta is. And you can scoop your fresh pasta or scoop your dry pasta and take home as much as you want. Well, there are no liners in the barrels, and there's supposed to be liners in the barrels so that way they don't get bugs in the pasta. And she never puts the liners in the barrel. And Blair never makes the sign. And Joe accidentally, something happens after she throws away her chain letter, right?
Yeah. Well, what happens is, so backing up a sec, we're setting up that they all have their responsibilities to Mrs. Garrett.
Right.
Right. And then the bad luck starts happening to them. Like, Blair breaks the camera.
When she smiles, yes.
Her passport picture, the camera breaks.
So she has to reschedule her appointment for another day, which is why she can't make the sign, because she keeps doing these things instead.
Right. And so everything's starting to go wrong. And so Joe is doing her homework on a typewriter.
No, Joe lies and says she's doing her homework.
She's doing the chain letter.
She's retyping the chain letters because something happened to her at school that day. Oh, a black cat ran in front of her motorcycle. She swerved to miss it. And she says now her motorcycle has a bad nose job and she needs to raise money to fix it. And she is like, well, this only happened because I didn't do the chain letter, so now I'm doing the chain letter.
Right.
So while she keeps telling Miss Garrett, I'm sorry, I can't do what you need me to do. But so Mrs. Garrett asks her, all right, well, whenever you're finished with your homework, because that's what she said she's been doing, whenever you're finished with your homework, will you please mail this letter and, mail these papers back to the health department for me? And Joe's like, absolutely. It's here underneath all these. Don't worry about it. I got it. She doesn't want Miss Garrett to see that she's not working on homework. She's working on a chain letter. So she shoos her away. And then we see that these papers to the health department that have all of the, I've been doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing. I'm registered and whatever. that is all mixed in with the chain letter stuff.
She grabs the papers from Mrs. Garrett and kind of shoves them into a pile in the corner.
No, they're already
of the
under.
table.
They're already under this pile, and she's like, she's trying to hide. She's like, yeah, Miss Garrett, they're right here. So she's just trying to like shoo her away. So then there's a break in time, right? They go to commercial and they come back, and it is now like a couple weeks later. Like, it's definitely sometime later, because the health inspector shows up.
Well, he shows up early because of what Joe did.
Right, but we're meant to, we understand that
There's enough time for the mail to have gotten to him.
Exactly. So, and we're meant to understand that it's at least a week later, because Blair has been back to her second photo shoot. And that was taking place because she had to reschedule because she broke the camera. Natalie has lost the election for school spirit, and the fruit flies experiment is over, and they've all died at this point. So we're far enough in the future that those things have all happened. So it's at least a week later. So the health inspector shows up, and the reason he came early is because, and he opens the letter that contains, or he opens the mail that contains the registration health department papers. And he says, well, I decided to come early because you sent me a bribe. And the $15 that was supposed to go into the chain letter, Joe has accidentally put into this health department registration forms. And so he thinks that he was being bribed, but poorly, because he says $15 isn't a bribe, $50 is a bribe. And then he's like, I know what you're trying to get away with. And then immediately starts citing them for everything that hasn't been done. And Mrs. Garrett is going to pieces, because this is a big deal. Like, this is her business. She has quit her job. Her brother is the one who's financing this whole venture. And these girls are working there, you know, for free, basically, just so they can have room and board. And they've totally let her down.
Yeah, all the things that she was talking about before, you know, it all comes back to roost. The barrels don't have their linings. There's no sign by the door. The refrigerator is full of 3,000 dead fruit flies. The inspector is able to somehow quantify that. So yeah, so he comes in and sit downs, and he becomes like jolly as he's like writing them up, and it's just like, okay, so this is going to be at least $200.
No, he says $500 in fines. And that is like, they are, I mean, literally, Miss Garrett is just like, she's silent and staring. She's like catatonic.
Yeah, she really, this performance is like, yeah, she really sells the like anger, just the like seething, quiet, like burning contempt.
And not even, I feel like that, I feel like she's just so disappointed. She's just so, she's like, I've made all the wrong decisions. Like, she's like beyond mad. She's not even mad. She's just like, I have to go a different direction. I can't trust you.
Yeah, she's just like, you are children. You are not responsible. Yeah. I need to get some real adults in here. And so she vows, she's like, I'm going to put an ad in the paper. And like, you guys just like, fuck off. And
basically, she's not, but that's what I'm saying. They're like, aren't you going to yell? And she's like, no, I'm beyond yelling.
No, that's what I'm saying. The performance, yes, is quiet, restrained, and just like, no, this is the time for action. And we get, you know, the whole resolution of this is sitcom-y as hell.
It's so quick. It's like they spent all the time setting up all of that other stuff and the chain letter thing.
They can't
and
give
the
us
whole
a single like Mrs. Doubtfire style like straw man, you know,
or even
applicant.
just like a quick, you know, we get what happened, like a quick like carousel of, you know, characters coming through and having a bunch of like short little shots, even if they were silent because they didn't want to pay people. Yeah. None of that. We come back from commercial. Mrs. Garrett's on the phone. She is basically telling an applicant who's called in response to the ad that she's had an overwhelming response, and so she's not taking any more applicants.
We don't see any of this. We just take Mrs. Garrett's word for it. On this phone call, she says like, yeah, sorry, there's so many people to interview that I'm not even scheduling interviews anymore.
Right.
You know? But that all happens somewhere that we're
off
not
camera. We never see.
Yeah, what we do get is, oh, knock, 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 excuse us, Mrs. Garrett. And we get all four or five of them.
4 girls showing up in the most 80s professional attire outfits ever.
Yes, they all have their different take on like what it is to be a serious-minded, like professionally dressed
Every
woman.
one of those outfits lived in my mother's closet when she was a teacher in the 1980s.
My thing in general, I feel like I say this every time we do Facts of Life. I thought that Jo was a biker girl.
She is.
I mean, I get that she mentions riding a motorcycle, but her vibe in this is Annie Hall to me.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
she definitely, but she's not biker like I'm like, leather Tuscadero or whatever. She,
or
I
like
mean, a little bit
touring.
early on.
I think that's the thing. I think whatever experience I had with Facts of Life must be from the earlier ones or something, because I picture her, with the leather jacket and having that rough and tumble attitude. And she still talks like that a little bit, but every time we watch it, she's wearing these blazers and cardigans and ties
she was
and
in like a big sweatshirt, like kind of like a oversized sweater and some like regular slacks this time.
Yeah, no, to me, it is a total Diane Keaton look that she's going for. But they're all dressed in this way to signify, like, don't worry, Mrs. Garrett. Now we're serious.
We're very serious. We're grown up. They bring Blair has like one of those big portfolio, like folio kind of briefcases that isn't a briefcase. It's like bigger, like you're carrying
it's like
artwork.
an art student would have on the subway.
Right.
And
she's got that, and then out of that, she produces one resume for all 4 of them.
Yeah, she goes, here's our resume, and Mrs. Garrett's like, 1 resume for all of you, and they're like, yeah, we're a package deal, so already, right? You nailed the outfits, and yet you couldn't have the professionalism to make your own resume.
Well, because they're not in competition. No, it's one for all, right? They're not trying to like outdo each other.
But it also speaks to the fact that like between them, they have one person's worth of experience.
Exactly. And the only thing on their resume, even though others of them have had other jobs throughout the series, they just have Edna, Mrs. Garrett, as their one reference and their one work history.
Yeah,
that's it.
And that's going to be their sort of segue. They do that dumb sentimental sitcom thing of sort of like talking about her in the third person and going like, well, our reference is somebody very special. We let her down, but we're hoping she forgives us.
Yeah, and she's like, I'm not going to pull any punches. I'm going to interview you girls just like I would anybody else. Tell me what happened at your last job. And they're like, well, we got fired, but it was our fault.
Yeah. So they basically forget about the chain letter thing. I feel like, I don't know, if we're supposed to understand, like, this was it part of the girls' immaturity? Like, is it that, like, they paid attention to the chain letter instead of doing their work for Mrs. Garrett, and part of them being immature and careless was messing around with the chain letter?
No, because only
place.
Jo and Tootie do anything with the chain letter. Tootie sends it to them, and then Jo is like, oh man, I gotta send him out. And then Blair's like, oh yeah, I sent mine out the other day. Better safe than sorry. That's her attack.
So it was still something that she did instead of painting the sign.
Right, but it was off camera. It was like, it was not
I'm
a
just trying
focus.
to wonder, is the show suggesting that the chain letter might have caused Blair to break the camera and Natalie to...
No, because they had all sent them out.
But not the first time, right? I thought that was the reason why Natalie lost the election and Blair broke the camera, was because... And why Jo got into her accident was because they had ignored the chain letter. All that stuff had happened, and so then they decided to send it instead of doing the stuff they were supposed to do for Mrs. Garrett.
I thought Blair said, "Oh, I sent mine out days ago. Better safe than sorry." So the camera breaking thing was.
Are you sure?
Not.
Then why did that happen? Like, why would that make?
That she would not be available again to do the thing for Mrs. Garrett.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
feel like the chain letter thing was only there to set up the accidental bribe. That's the only reason it was there. I don't think it was trying to like show us that bad luck was actually happening in the way that it was in All in the Family.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's debatable. My memory is fuzzy, but just the fact that the whole middle of the episode is devoted to them all having these little mishaps, to me means that maybe it's like placing some power with the chain letter.
Yeah, well, but Tootie did send it out right away. She didn't really have a mishap. She just made the biggest mistake of all by leaving the fruit flies in the fridge.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, let's see how this all plays out in the next show. Home Improvement.
When the world never seems to be living.
Okay, that was from Chain Letters. We're about to
Tell me
hear
how I did.
the final segment
how I
from
did.
the Caught Stealing podcast, but I am mildly proud to say you got 7 out of 10 correct.
Oh, that's not great. I was hoping for 8. Okay, what did I get wrong?
Okay, I'm just going to go through them real fast. What year did the first season of The Facts of Life premiere? You said 79. That was correct. Which famous 80s actress was in the first season?
Molly
You correctly
Ringwald, that was
said
correct.
Molly Ringwald.
Yes.
What was the name of the private school they attended? Eastland High. Eastland School, rather. Who did Blair marry on The Facts of Life? This was your first mistake.
Oh,
you
is it
said
Tad?
Tad Warner.
No.
You said Stephen Bradley. It was Tad Warner.
Which I said was the greatest name, so I'm glad it was that one.
Who played Blair's father? You said Scott Bryce. It was this name that I can't even read because of the green on blue writing. Nicholas Coster is the guy who played him. This actress voices Velma Dinkley on the new Scooby-Doo. You correctly said Mindy Cohen. What famous TV doctor was fired from the show? Of course, that was
Clooney,
George
yeah.
Clooney. When Charlotte Rae left the show, she recommended which
Cloris
actress to
Leachman.
replace her. That was Cloris Leachman. Which actress was nominated for a Best Actress Emmy Award in 1982 for her role on the show? That was Charlotte Rae. So it was the final one you got wrong. The Facts of Life star that hosts MeTV's popular
Is
series.
it Kim Fields?
It is not Kim Fields, nor is it Mindy Cohen. It is Lisa.
Oh, it's Blair.
Welchel.
Yeah. Oh, it's Blair. She is like Kirk Cameron. She's gone the route of I only do like Christian television now.
Yeah, fair enough. So there you have it, a so-so showing on The Facts of Life.
70%.
Yeah. So we're going to finish it off with a segment from the shoplifting episode, the episode where everyone gets caught stealing. And then the grand finale of this all is going to be the personality quiz.
Yes.
We will ask each other. We will find out which Facts of Life gal
character we are.
We really are. But yeah, before that, this is the segment from our Caught Stealing episode. We were also talking about the Partridge Family. Remember the little kid? I really liked his story, the little redhead kid getting caught shoplifting. We had a Small Wonder in here with the little robot girl.
With the diamond necklace or whatever that she kept taking.
And then we had the Home Improvement where
another Home
little
Improvement.
Mark, that's true. It's interesting that we always pair up the Facts of Life with Home Improvement. But yeah, I guess because they're so like lesson based, maybe. But yeah, Mark.
Or they're appropriately spaced in time.
Yeah, that is true. Mark got caught shoplifting the Swiss Army knife. It was all about that. But yes, this is the Facts of Life segment from the shoplifting episode.
And they were buying a present or trying to get a birthday present for Mrs. Garrett.
Yep, you'll hear all about it.
You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. The facts of life.
Okay, so let's move on to Facts of Life.
Season 2, Episode 6, Shoplifting.
Yeah, so Facts of Life is old hat at this point. We've covered it a handful of times. We saw Tootie learn how to drive. We saw Natalie contemplate losing her virginity. I feel like this is one of the earlier episodes we've watched, even though I know it's not super early in the run, but everyone looks much younger.
Oh, it is definitely the earliest episode we've watched.
Because we've been
season
stuck with
2.
the late ones. Yeah.
We've watched a lot more of the later ones where it's kind of hard to believe that they're actually teenagers.
Yeah.
They still have them in high school in some of them, and then in the later ones they have them in college. But yeah, this one is still early days. This is actually the first season that Joe is in the show because remember that first season, they had like a cast of thousands. Like Molly Ringwald was in the show in season 1, and it was like a full-on dorm where they just had tons of girls. And then at the end of season 1, they narrowed the cast down to 5 people, 4 of the original girls, and then they added in Joe.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I guess at this point, I have to accept it's full-on Mandela effect false memory that she went around always wearing a leather jacket because she never wears that. I love her baseball tees that she wears throughout this episode. I've always liked that look. Just her overall style. A+ for me, even without the leather jacket. Well, and she sounds
like you. Like, this is still early days where she's still talking like this.
Yeah, no, she's got the heavy, New York accent or whatever it's supposed to be, and I guess I just filled in the leather jacket in my mind, and this is going to be one of those episodes that does focus on her as a catalyst for the plot. Like I said, this is a birthday present one where we're finding out that it's Mrs. Garrett's birthday, and tying into our trope from last week, she's been on a diet. And so she's happy that she's lost all this weight. She feels more alive than ever.
She had her season 2 glow up.
Yeah. I guess this is probably a real thing. The actress lost weight. And so, we get this sort of socioeconomic dynamic within the friend group, because Blair is going to not want to chip in for Mrs. Garrett's present, right?
No, she's like, I was born with good taste. I'm going to buy my own present. You all can get something else.
Yes, which I have to admit, I have been this person once or twice. But I just remember like there were certain times where I would have like an idea of like a present for like a close friend. And then a bunch of people would be like, oh, hey, let's all chip in and get this thing. And I kind of felt like, oh, like that's fine for like, some random person whose party we're going to. But like, I actually had this thing that I was going to do.
Yeah, I had an idea.
But anyway.
For Blair, it's not really that she has an idea.
No.
She's just like, I'm going to spend a certain amount of money because that's what I do, because I'm rich, and happy to put your names on it, but no, you don't get any input into the decision making. Yeah. Like, I'm going to decide I have good taste and you don't. Yeah,
and it's going to be a running thing throughout the whole show that Blair's sort of snottiness about style kind of like, she just kind of disagrees with everything that everybody likes.
Right.
But anyway, that leaves Joe, Tootie, and Natalie to do the old like, oh, well, I've got $4.10 from my allowance and my Aunt Bertha gave me 37 cents, and they're pooling their money and they go to this department store.
They've seen an advertisement. They overheard Mrs. Garrett say that she wants a Hawaiian shirt.
Yes, a Hawaiian blouse,
That's
a phrase I wasn't super familiar with.
But it's not like a Hawaiian shirt like you or I would call like, oh, it's Hawaiian Shirt Tuesday or whatever. No, it's more just like a wild print.
Yeah, like it
remember Jams? Those shorts that it has that kind of like wild print.
Yeah, it's more, I think we think of Hawaiian shirts as like a repeating pattern.
Right.
And this is more of like one big crazy sort of tropical design.
Right. And it's like abstract art more than anything else. It's just wild colors.
Yeah, I feel like there's a suggestion of like a palm leaf or something, but it's so sort of large that it doesn't look like a bunch of coconut trees or something.
Yeah, for sure. And there's no flowers or anything like that. It's just like very kind of 80s sort of angular wild colors.
Yeah.
So anyway, so they saw this advertisement, or Mindy, that's her real name. Natalie saw the advertisement that said that this department store is having a half off sale on these Hawaiian type blouses. So they're like, great. we have $15. We can go these, if these blouses are half off, we can afford one. So they take their money, they go there, and this rude ass sales lady, she's like the sales lady from Legally Blonde.
I was going to say
ugh.
Pretty Woman. She told me Pretty Woman, sir. She said, the clothes for the likes of you are upstairs.
Yes, she's so rude. So, well, she's like, you kids can, yours is on the third floor. And they're like, no, we're buying a present. And she's like, great. Like, she just can't stand them.
Yeah.
And so they find the shirt that they want, and then they go to take it to her, and she's like, okay, that's $30. And they're like, no, it's half off. And she was like, that sale ended yesterday. And Natalie's like, but I just saw the ad yesterday. And she's like, I don't know what to tell you. It was a one-day sale. And Natalie's like, but it didn't say that in the ad. And so they felt like they were like bait and switch, and they were feeling very scandalized, and this woman's being such a bitch to them.
Well, can I also mention, this is the second of Natalie's political jokes in the first 10 minutes of this show. In the first scene, when the girls are bickering, she goes, you two fight so well. Have you ever thought of becoming Middle East countries? Okay.
It's 1980. It's this aired December 31st, 1980. On New Year's Eve. It's an election year.
Yeah, I know what it's referring to, but it is just funny. It's like, was this Murphy Brown or Facts of Life?
I guess it's the year after the election, but yeah.
And then here in the store, when this lady is like dicking them around, she goes, ma'am, have you ever heard of Ralph Nader? She goes, does the name Ralph Nader mean anything to you? Which I guess he was into the like consumer protections and stuff like that. I think of him as like the Green Party, like more...
Me too.
Environmentalism stuff, but
he was a businessman. That's kind of all I remember. I don't know. I didn't really get the joke.
Ralph Nader, hot on the lips of Natalie on the Facts of Life. And so, they're all feeling pretty put out by this, the store is too expensive. They're not honoring the sale. And then Joe says, it doesn't have to cost anything. And this is going to be the first and not the last time where we hear the audible gasps and titters of the studio audience as they start to catch on to what's about to go down here.
Right. Tootie and Natalie are scandalized. They're like, you don't mean.
It takes them a long time.
That can't actually, wait a minute. You're what? And
Joe has to say like 7 different things.
To get them to understand.
Shall we say, take it without paying.
Yeah.
Like they're still not getting it.
They're like, what do you mean? So she's like, I'm going to go find a dressing room, and you guys just, hang out here and browse. And so they both are like, she's not really going to do it. There's no way she's really going to do it.
We're going to be accessories. And the other one goes,
Natalie says
that. Tootie goes, how can we be accessories? We're in the sportswear department.
Yes.
Rim shot. Good one.
Exactly. So then Joe comes back out. She doesn't have the shirt on her. And Tootie's like, oh, thank goodness.
But
she
she's
decided.
Walking in a super weird way.
Yeah, she is. You can tell it's like under her, kind of like she's wearing it underneath her other clothes. And so she puts her arms around the two girls, and Tootie's like, oh, thank goodness you didn't bring it with you. And then Natalie's like, you've got a tag hanging out above your collar. And she's like, and tucks it away. And then we get the same beat that we get as the boys are heading out of the pharmacy. We get it here. The security guard is like, ladies, excuse me, girls. And they're like, frozen.
Right out of Hitchcock. Yeah, the old, excuse me. And then just like, oh, well, you need to know to use the other exit because there's construction there.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, thank you so much. And they scurry off to the other exit. But we get to feel that like moment of, terror that we're about to be caught with them.
Yeah. Back home, Blair gives Mrs. Garrett the Gucci bag that she bought for her birthday.
Fucking fancy. She pulls that out and I was like, that's a Gucci bag. Like, she's no joke. And then Blair's response is, and the good thing about it is that the price just keeps going up. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. And then, the rest of the girls give her the Hawaiian shirt that she asks for. We've got lots of little sitcom-y, dramatic irony type stuff here where, one of them, or where Mrs. Garrett says, you shouldn't have. And Tootie says, you can say that again.
Yep.
They're all like struggling with the guilt of having except for Joe, who is still just sort of like either, I'm not going to say a sociopath. I think she's got it in her mind.
She's the badass, right? Yeah. She's like, that store tried to rip us off. We ripped them off right back.
She's just so indignant about this phony sale or the saleswoman's dismissing of them that she's just like, I'm not going going to feel bad about this.
It's Aldrin Justice from How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, and so Natalie and Tootie are doing that same sort of oversharing thing that Danny did, that same sort of like nervous, supplying way too much information every time Mrs. Garrett asked them about something. And then Mrs. Garrett gets the idea, heavily encouraged by Blair, to exchange the shirt at the store for a different size or a different shirt.
Yeah. Blair wants her to exchange it for a whole different shirt. Mrs. Garrett is like, actually, I should probably just exchange it because it's too big. So she takes it back to the store. The minute she walks in the store and hands it to the lady, that same nasty sales lady, like, flags the security guy and points at her and is like, that's the shirt. That's her. Like, she knows the one shirt that's gone missing.
Here's the thing. Yeah, I was confused about this and kind of bouncing back and forth because she shows up. First, she says to the sales lady, I want to return this shirt. And at first, I was incredulous. Like, this lady is not going to remember, kind of like Al does in the later episode. She's not going to be abreast of one shirt being missing.
Right.
Which is at first what it seems like.
And that
then
is
she
right.
goes, right. And then she goes, oh, if you don't have the receipt, let me look through my receipts. And she started acting more cordial.
No, she's stalling for time.
Right.
She is like telling the guy from the beginning, follow her around.
I think that's, I guess, what we're ultimately supposed to conclude. For a second, I thought, oh, no, this does make sense. She is actually looking through the receipts to see what's what. And then we get the introduction of another great recurring subtrope, the retail store detective.
That's right.
The security officer who is played by the guy that plays Mort Seinfeld, Jerry Seinfeld's dad.
Dick
already
O'Neill.
pretty old already at this point.
Yeah.
And just like the one we're going to get later on in Small Wonder, the sort of like older guy in
kind
a like
of
frumpy
gruff
trench coat.
But it's so funny because, like, Mrs. Garrett, obviously, she doesn't know that this is stolen. She just, she is like, oh, I'm, so good looking now because I've lost all this weight.
Yes.
And this man's coming over, just like hovering around her, very interested in the blouses that she's
asking
looking
questions.
at. Asking lots of questions. And so she finally just stops and she's like, are you trying to pick me up?
Yes.
And he's like, in a manner of speaking.
Yes. That is one of like 10 little exchanges. Very, very sitcom-y. The standard, the two people don't understand the premise of the conversation they're having.
No. He's purposefully like leading her on like that.
Oh, yeah. He's being coy and not coming out with, I'm about to arrest you. He's sort of like studying what she says and sizing her up and being, he's getting ready to kind of like
and also flirting with her, which is funny.
And she's in full flirtation mode. Like you said,
he's like, why don't you
oblivious.
come with me? And she's like, I think we're going to have maybe a dinner some other time. I'm not coming with you right now. Like, oh my God.
And there is this clear, like, sort of sexual tension. And, just like you said, are you trying to pick me up? Well, I guess you could say that. And then he straight up arrests her and we cut, act break, go to commercial. And then, we're back. We don't get to see her in jail. She comes back home.
No, because she's in mall jail.
Yeah. She doesn't like get sent to prison or anything.
Have you ever been in the mall jail? Have you ever like seen that area?
Well, my mom worked behind the scenes at a mall. I never saw a jail. I never saw any like... It
was like a holding room.
Yeah, I think I saw places in the mall where like the general public wasn't allowed to go, but no jails.
Yeah, there was like... At the end of the food court by the bathrooms in the mall that was like right by my house growing up, there was like the area where the mall cops, that was like their office.
Yeah.
So like when they weren't roaming around, that was like where they could get coffee or, interview people or hold little, ne'er-do-well children who have been shoplifting and caught and call their parents. And so we always used to laugh at that place and we would call it mall jail and we'd make fun of the mall cops. But we always used to tease each other like, oh, yeah, you're going to go to mall jail, which was like a room.
Yeah. I mean, and now at this point, I feel like most stores have the policy to not do anything with shoplifters,
Right,
they
because
just
everybody's
don't
allowed
wanna-
to fucking pack heat.
Yeah, and exactly. They don't want to create unsafe situations. But anyway, she comes home and we have more of this sort of guilt trip, she basically plays dumb with the girls, right, to get them to sort of break down and confess.
Yeah, well, she comes in and she's like, oh, I went back to the store, girls. She has that weird sort of lilting voice.
Yeah.
Oh, girls, I went back to the store. You went back to the store? Oh my gosh, why? Why would you do that? Oh, well, Blair helped me see that I needed to maybe exchange. And I decided to exchange the shirt, not just for one in a different size, but for a completely different one. And you'll never guess what happened. And they were all like, oh no, why would you do that? Why would you, Blair? Why would you do that? And then they came clean. Natalie and Tootie were like, we stole it. We stole the shirt. And then Joe was like, no, it wasn't. Please don't blame them. Like, I convinced them it was all my idea. I stole the shirt. They were just there with me.
Yeah. Yeah, and eventually, Mrs. Garrett is going to say, well, your names are on the gift. You were part of this whole caper, she puts it. And so they get some punishment, too. The main punishment is going to be Mrs. Garrett explains, oh, I bought the shirt. I put it on layaway. And, Joe, you're going to work at Harrison's on the weekend and pay it back. And, yeah, it's interesting watching this last scene when everything comes out in the open and how Blair kind of stands apart from this whole thing. I sort of feel the same way about like the racial stuff we were talking about with Nell Carter's show, where it's like, it's not that they don't get that this is an aspect of it. It's built into the story. And I still wonder if they the writers of the show, fully get the suggestions and implications of having this one character completely avoid this whole dilemma and literally not be part of the show, not have to learn that lesson because of her affluence.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of funny the way it's showing, this is a whole journey that some of us have to go on, wanting to buy a present and not being able to afford it and having to wrestle with the morality. And then some of us, like Blair, just sidestep the whole issue by being rich.
Because I'm wealthy, so I didn't have to learn this lesson of not stealing. I mean, it definitely could be that. I do know in later episodes, like we talked about with the Losing Your Virginity episode, that was a storyline that was written for Blair. And because of her deep Christian beliefs, she was like, I won't do it and you can't make me do it. And so they rewrote it for Natalie. I mean, this is still probably too early and Blair's probably too young to be like, no, I'm not doing the shoplifting story. Yeah.
Well, and that would be pretty extreme. I mean, at that point,
how do you make that happen when she has money?
Yeah, well, just also if you're a sitcom actor and you're refusing to even do a I got caught stealing a present storyline.
I mean, there's a bunch of storylines in the later season that she's like, nope, 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 nope. She noped out of a ton of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's why you've got all these different characters. And of course, the ironic thing is she just comes across as more of a villain than anybody.
Right, I know.
By being so snotty. It ends with Mrs. Garrett saying it's not all bad. I've got a date with that hot security guard.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Once he realized I wasn't a thief, he asked me out.
Yeah. So definite subtrope there with the, older people getting together with the security guards.
Yeah, we're going to see that again in Small Wonder. It was way creepier in Small Wonder, but everything's way creepier in Small Wonder.
Yeah, we're going to have all of that stuff, the present angle, the security guard, everything. So, yeah, let's do it. Let's move on to Small Wonder.
And suddenly you're finding out the facts of life are all about you.
Okay, that was from the Caught Stealing episode. We are almost done with the grand facts of life factotum, but finally we're going to do this.
We got to know. We got to
quiz.
figure out which fact of life girly are you.
Yeah, so we're going to ask each other the questions.
Yeah, and we'll just pick our own answers.
I think we should click each other's, and then we can read each other like this is who you are.
Yeah. Understood. All right, so the first one up is pick an 80s teen movie from these choices. Footloose, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I'm sure you're going to pick that one. The Goonies, Dirty Dancing, and Say Anything.
Yeah, I got to say, for me, I don't have a super strong... I've seen all of these movies. Don't have a super strong connection to any of them. I know that this has become an unpopular opinion for some reason, but I'm going to say Goonies for me.
Good for you. I figured that's what you would pick because I know you think Ferris Bueller is a psychopath.
It's a good movie.
am 100% going to choose Say Anything.
All right. Next question. Pick an 80s TV show. You've got Cheers, Three's Company, Golden Girls, MASH, or The Muppet Show.
Oh, that's really tough. I watched Cheers, The Golden Girls, and The Muppet Show, like religiously when I was younger. Gosh. Oh, that's so hard. And then now, like, all of them are great to go back to. Man. Oof. What are you going to pick?
Yeah, for me, the column on the left, Cheers, Golden Girls, and Muppet Show, is a pretty tough choice, but I'm just going to go with my gut and say Muppet Show.
Yeah. And I got to go with Cheers, I think.
All right, so you're clicking Muppet Show for me.
Yes.
And I'm clicking Cheers for you.
The next question is, what drives you? My hopes and dreams for the future, my desire to make a positive impact in this world. Nothing drives me, I drive myself. The need to live up to expectations or the need to prove myself. This is deep.
Yeah, it's deeper than the others. I'm going to say hopes and dreams for the future.
Oh, nice. Oh, gosh. My need to make a positive impact.
Okay. What is your Hogwarts house? Now, this is kind of bullshit because this is something that you'd normally take a quiz to get to.
But everybody already knows.
All right. I mean,
one of the choices is what's a Hogwarts house, so that's fun. I mean, I'm a Gryffindor.
Okay.
I've always been a Gryffindor.
All right. Well, just to go through the proper thing, the options are Ravenclaw, Gryffindor, Slytherin, Hufflepuff, or what's a Hogwarts house?
Right.
Yeah.
Have you taken a quiz on that? Do you know what your Hogwarts house is?
No, I don't want to spend the time
we gotta get you to the Sorting Hat
on the digression. I like Harry Potter. I think it's kind of one of the weaknesses of the setup of Harry Potter.
You're thinking way too much. We know you're a Hufflepuff.
All right, Ravenclaw.
He thinks he's a Ravenclaw.
Hufflepuff. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff. I don't know what the personalities are because they don't.
Ravenclaws are the smart ones. Hufflepuffs are the like nervous Nelly ones.
Okay, fine. I'll be Hufflepuff. Oh wait, shit! I clicked that for you. So all right. So which house are you?
I'm Gryffindor.
Okay. See, that's the thing. Like, it's people just declaring that they're Gryffindor.
No, I'm not declaring that I'm Gryffindor. I've taken two different. I did the like in the Potter Potter.
But I'm just saying that the thing with Harry Potter is
do you remember? Do we really have to argue about this on the podcast?
No, you're right. We should.
Like, who cares?
In an ideal world, where do you see yourself in 10 years? With a family of my own, killing it in my chosen career, traveling, back in school, or wherever I am, I just want to be happy.
Wherever I am, I just want to be happy. How about you?
Obviously, everyone says that. I'll say killing it in my chosen career just to be a little different.
I think most people would say traveling, but...
Well, but the thing is, being happy, like, sort of supersedes all of those.
Yeah, but I don't think people are thinking, like, that's the lame answer that you don't choose. You choose the other ones. Also, most people who take BuzzFeed quizzes are 11 years old, so they'd say family. But, okay, so pick a George. George Clooney, George Harrison, George Washington, George Orwell, or Boy George.
Yeah. Okay, this is not a choice I've ever thought about. Let's see. Well... Definitely George Harrison over Boy George or George Orwell in terms of sheer, if we're doing like George Harrison just made so much more stuff that I like. Those guys basically only made one thing each, maybe 2 or 3 for Boy George. George Washington did some pretty good stuff. But I guess George Clooney is the one that I have the most like affinity for, if I'm being honest, in terms of my day-to-day life.
George Clooney.
All right, we're both picking Clooney.
And he's the one that has to do with Facts of Life.
He's the more germane George. Pick somewhere to vacation. Venice, Paris, Dublin, Seoul, or New York City.
Oh, I'm such a jerk. I've been to all these places but Seoul, so I'm choosing Seoul.
Yeah, I mean, we live in New York City more or less, so that doesn't make sense. Honestly, like, they're actually all pretty appealing, and I've never been to any of those places. I'll say Venice. Say Venice for me.
Yep.
And I'll click Seoul for you.
Pick a holiday: Christmas, Arbor Day, New Year's Eve, my birthday, Easter.
So I guess my birthday means my birthday.
Yep.
Christmas.
Okay, I also pick Christmas.
All right. I hope we're not the same Facts of Life girl. That would be incest.
How do you wish people would see you? With their eyes, compassionate, decent, dynamic, or perfect?
I don't know how to answer that one. I guess decent.
Great. I say dynamic.
Okay, we just got a burst of confetti and a revelation. Do you want to know which Facts of Life girl you are?
Uh-huh. Are you ready to know which Facts of Life girl you are?
Yeah.
Okay. You, my friend, are Joe. You think you might be tough, but underneath it all, you're a softie. You especially have a soft spot for friends and family. You're loyal to the end, and your loved ones know they can always count on you.
Well, let me tell you something. You are Joe. You might think you're tough, but underneath it all, you're a softie. You especially have a soft spot for friends and family. You're loyal to the end, and your loved ones know they can always count on you.
See, there you go.
We answer differently for like most things, I thought.
Who knows? These BuzzFeed quizzes, I swear sometimes they just only have one person they say everybody is, so they only have to do one set of HTML code.
Well, and everybody wants to be Joe, I guess. Everyone wants to be like, yeah, you're tough, but you're also a softie. Like, you're nice,
I guess.
even though people think you're
I would
tough.
like to be Tootie.
Well, there you have it, everybody. The trivia, the personalities, the podcast segments, anything you ever wanted to know about the facts of life.
The facts of life.
You've taken the good, you've taken the bad, and you've taken it all. All right, that's what we've got this week. What are we talking about next week?
Next week, it's all about superheroes, Jay. Blaine, we're watching episodes with superheroes. We're going to watch Gilligan's Island, Season 3, Episode 3, Pass the Vegetables, Please. Bewitched, Season 6, Episode 20, Super Arthur. Dinosaurs, Season 4, Episode 2, Earl, Don't Be a Hero. And The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, Season 3, Episode 4, Super Twins.
Yep, sitcom characters turned superheroes is next week, and until then, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.